Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Susan Berishaj. I'm connecting from the East Coast in the United States. I believe that we have a few people in the chat. I see some activities happening. So just wanted to invite everyone to let us know where you're connecting from. So I see. I see people. Sorry, Abhijit, if you can um, essentially share the share the comments. Okay, perfect. So we have India. We have people joining in. It looks like India. It's the primary location, New Delhi. Tejas. Just let us know. Come on, join in. Let us know where you're connecting from. And also, what schools are you targeting? I think that's, the reason why you're here. So have you started your applications, or are you just thinking about which rounds to apply? So let us know in the chat, and we can start sharing them along the way. I know you're not here to necessarily just for me to read the chat room. So I'm going to dive into the presentation for today. And the topic of course, why you're all here. So the MBA, Trinity, HBS, Stanford, and Wharton. So I am Susan Berishaj. I'm the founder of C Admissions, which is a boutique admissions coaching firm focused on helping a limited number of MBA students go through the entire process of the application, helping them get a really customized experience. So we are here today to talk about the MBA Trinity, so HBS, GSB, and Wharton. And while no single element of a candidate's application is the determining factor of admissions, especially to these coveted business schools, taking into account their strengths and what you bring to the table is really a critical point to showcase that you are that future leader that fits the culture of the institution as a student, but also a culture that represents the institution long-term. Now, before we go into the details of the presentation today, I want to just take a moment and give a little bit more of a background about me and how I got involved in admissions coaching. So I started C Admissions because I was really frustrated when strong candidates were guided by professional admissions consultants to tell a mediocre story because it fit what a supposed MBA candidate should look like, or echoes what others have done in their MBA applications. And really, they did not take into account the unique personality traits and the experiences of that given individual. And my journey started when I guided a strong candidate who had already hired a coach to help submit her application. I read her materials and knew that if she submitted that written story, HBS, which was her dream school, would not admit her. I proceeded to help her step by step by learning first and foremost about her lived experience, which helped me identify patterns and themes that spoke to who she was, and helped her put together an essay that highlighted her unique experiences and worldview that enticed HBS to offer her admission. Now, this was the origin story that led me to want to make sure that strong applicants who want that hand-holding process receive the guidance that helped them tell a unique value add to each of these top 20 programs. Now, in my world, there is no such thing as one size fits all. And I make sure that each client receives guidance along the way that empowers them to be genuine in who they are in the application process. From my experience, no one that has been disingenuine or that has tried to fit a mold that they're not has been accepted to a program. It is those that have been vulnerable, those that have really taken the time to demonstrate who they are to the admission team that have seen success. So in today's presentation, what I want to do is take these lessons that I've learned over the past 7 years helping applicants through with their application to M7 and top 20 programs, and share with you some of those tips and elements of how to put together strong applications for these 3 specific schools. And what I would encourage everyone as you're listening during this presentation, that you write your own questions about your application. So if you're targeting these specific 3 schools, please write the question that you have about these 3 schools, especially as it relates to you writing your story. Of course, the more details I have, the more of a specific answer I can provide that can not only help you in your application, but also can help the community craft really strong narratives for specifically these 3 schools. And if you want to have a deeper conversation and discuss your candidacy, discuss your application, do feel free to reach out to us. I have a 30-minute consultation call where I can get to know your story, what your struggles are, and then we can talk about next steps if you need support from a coach or if you're going to handle it on your own. And finally, if you like this video, if you like the content, if you like the discussion, please give it a thumbs up. This helps us curate future content that is beneficial to the community at the GMAT Club and the MBA applicant or MBA aspirant community. So with that, let's go into the presentation of what I am looking to cover today. So first and foremost, I think it's important to just take a moment and step back and look at what the schools offer, an overview of what a candidate essentially looks for. Also, I want to look at what sets each of these schools apart. That really helps you identify how you're going to craft, or the lens through which you're going to craft each of the essays, each of the applications. One of the things I often hear from applicants is that I started doing my research and I just can't differentiate between the schools. They all seem that they offer the same things. So I think it's an important piece to take a moment and just discuss it. And then how to approach telling your story in each school, the do's and don'ts essentially of what you should be thinking about, you should keep in mind as you're crafting your narratives and putting together your entire application to these programs. Of course, as you consider your application, you must keep in mind your candidacy. So how do you stack up against the class profile, the other applicants that are going to be similar to what the class profile looks like? Are you in line with the kind of candidate that these schools have accepted in the past? Or are there areas where you are weaker and areas that perhaps you are even stronger? Now, it is important to bear in mind that as I share these, the class itself, the school overview, that you don't be discouraged if you do not meet exactly the averages or the industries that show up on the screen. Don't be discouraged. There's more to the application review than just stats. And even if you don't meet those specific averages, there is still chance for you to succeed, of course, provided that you meet the other elements of what the school is looking for. So let's look at HBS. That's the first one you have on the screen. Out of the 3 programs that we are discussing today, HBS is the largest in size. So we have 1,010 students that have accepted offers from HBS. They have applicants with really strong academic aptitude that's reflected in the GPA and the GMAT and GRE. And about 44% of the class is comprised of consultants and finance professionals, with 56% of the class ending up in consulting, tech, and private equity, which really and you'll see the other schools look a little bit different as far as like where the students are going. What we learned from this sort of like retrospective with HBS is that the strength of the program really enables students to go into a variety of fields in variety of industries, essentially. The admission rate for HBS has increased since 2020, but we've also seen an increase in class size. So there could be a correlation or a connection between those two. Let's discuss GSB. So GSB has actually the smallest of the three programs as far as the class size is concerned, and also the lowest rate. We're talking single digits, with the GSB being one of the most sought after, but also one of the most notoriously challenging, nebulous admission process as far as who gets in and who does not. They do invite about essentially 2 candidates for every seat that's available to interview. So it's a really rigorous process to get into the GSB ecosystem. Of course, the average class has impeccable academics. These are no slackers. These are individuals that are high achievers, not just academically, but also in the community itself. About 55% of the class goes into finance, consulting, and tech, which comes to no surprise, but or comes from those areas. But 80% of the class goes into the same sectors, which is a really high number as far as really concentrated sort of output. And they also have one of the highest post-MBA base salaries of the 3 schools that we're referencing here. Wharton, it sits kind of in between the class size of HBS and GSB, and it has also the highest acceptance rate of the 3 programs. Now, when you look at these numbers, one thing that I do want to have you bear in mind that the acceptance rate that you see, even though it's a double digit, that doesn't mean that it's easy to gain admission to these programs. And I'm sure you know this, but I think it's always a good reminder that essentially, about 80% of the applicants that are applying to Wharton do not get admitted, which is pretty extensive, pretty large number. They have strong academic, and it's also one of the schools that has the greatest number of females on campus, which to me that is really important stats to look at. Post-MBA, finance, tech, and consulting are the major career sort of placements and where students go into, which comes to really no surprise that those are the 3 sectors that have the highest paying jobs, and are the ones that are most sought after by MBA candidates or alumni once they graduate. So looking across the board, they are the metrics that I just gave are really impeccable in the sense of the average class being really strong academic standing, really strong GMAT, GRE scores, and sometimes that in and of itself is really intimidating to some of the applicants. But you also hear stories where candidate or an applicant with a below 3.0 GPA gets into HBS or gets into GSB or any of these schools. So what is important to take into account and not to really focus solely on the metrics is taking into account or looking at what the schools are really looking for in that candidate. When they say they do look at the applicant from a holistic perspective, they really do mean that from a really holistic perspective as far as what you bring to the table as a whole, not just those metrics themselves. So HBS is a school that values leadership, and you can see that from where the students end up. This is truly a general management program that trains students to be excellent leaders in helping organizations grow, irrespective of the field or the industry that they're in. Could be anything from the corporate world to nonprofit or government. These are robust leaders that are trained in a robust way to handle any kind of issue that they experience in the real world. It is known as a school with a really heavy caseload, or the case methods. That is, you go through essentially over 500 cases during your 2 years at HBS. That teaches students to think critically, to think strategically, to think holistically about the problems that companies have faced in the past. Because obviously, when you're dealing with cases, you're dealing with, in most situations, past events, and how they can learn from these experiences to make decisions in those leadership roles that they're going to experience once they leave HBS. Now, when you think about the kind of training you get at HBS, kind of flip those acronyms. What is HBS looking for in a successful candidate? And they do share this information with you on the school's website. So they want habits of leadership, they want analytic aptitude and appetite, they want engaged community citizens. So what do those three areas mean? What do those three areas mean? So habits of leadership, you need to demonstrate that you are that leader, even if you don't have a leadership title, that you take on, whether that is a project, whether that is a segment of a project, that you take on the responsibility of a leader for the work that you're doing, that you are analytical, that you are looking at problems and using data to make decisions, so you don't shy away from leveraging data. But you also you should have rather a analytic aptitude, meaning that you really want to know more about how to leverage data to make better business decisions. And an engaged community citizen. This means that you have to demonstrate that you are not someone who just goes to work and goes home and hangs out with his friends or her friends, that you are worried about and contributing to making a better environment around you, whether that is the community beyond your job that you get paid within the institution. So I know this consultants that are listening can perhaps think about this element, where within especially the large consulting firms, you have opportunities to contribute to community kinds of projects that are pro bono sort of experiences, or you can take on voluntary initiative to contribute to your community beyond your place of work. And one thing that I would say here, there should be a pattern to the community work that you are doing. There should be a reason why you're doing what you're doing. It's not just about volunteering to teach English. It's really about having a passion for something that matters to you and contributing your time, your extra time that you have towards that cause. Now, above all, HBS looks for a candidate that is not intimidated by challenges. And what I mean by this is that you will need to demonstrate to HBS that you are someone who has convictions and that you don't necessarily easily back down from those convictions, that you have been challenged in your life, that you haven't, just been handed things. And those challenges have helped you grow, particularly on a personal level. As a leader, you should be able to demonstrate that you are a thoughtful leader. You are someone who is reflective of his or her own um, presence, the way you work, the way you do things, and how you've grown from those experiences, and also how you have changed the environment around you because of the way you have approached challenges around. So there are many different ways that you can go about answering this kind of question, many different kinds of examples that you can include here. But the idea is that you demonstrate that you are someone who is not fearful of being challenged, and that you take on that challenge with zeal, essentially. So let's go to GSB. GSB is a school that is really admired by many people. It has unparalleled resources, particularly for innovators, but really anyone that is looking to change the world. You not only have the network within campus, so the students, extremely intelligent, extremely caring individuals that care about the world as a whole. That are your peers, that are the ones who are going to challenge your thinking. They're going to give you new perspectives to think about. That will also be professors that are leaders in their field, and they're going to challenge you, challenge how you think, and they want you. They typically have this sort of philosophy around asking, why did you do whatever it is that you did? Why did you choose to wear a white button-down shirt, for example? I'm just giving sort of a very basic example. That's not what you're going to be questioned on. But the idea is that why did you make decisions the way you made decisions? And it's not really about questioning your decision making, but rather helping you really think critically about where you're going, and also providing you with feedback. That's one of the most rewarding things about that the community at GSB is having people around you that are supporting you, are going to listen to your ideas that you have, and provide feedback that is instrumental to helping you craft your next big, business idea or innovative project that you're working on. And the other thing that GSB is, as far as resources is concerned, offers an amazing network of individuals, particularly of professionals, particularly those that are interested in the VCPE space, in the tech, in sort of like the tech world, and all of its subsectors, right? Because you can have a variety of different areas within the tech sphere that you can be interested in. And having that supportive community that gives you the time to listen to your idea, to give you feedback, is one of the most instrumental things that you can have access to as you develop your leadership, as you develop your business idea or your project or whatever it is that you will be working on. And there's plenty of opportunities for hands-on learning, which, of course, you need that as you are, growing as a professional and as an individual. They're looking, when they're evaluating your profile, and again, some of this information is readily available on GSB's website, is they're looking for the 3 hows. So how do you think, how do you lead, and how do you see the world? So let's take each one of those separately. So how do you think? Are you someone who is a growth-minded person? And what I mean by that is, if you have not read Carol Dweck's Mindset book, you should definitely pick it up. It is a really interesting perspective on the kinds of people that succeed in the world. And when GSB is looking for those next generation of its graduates, of its alumni, they're looking for those individuals who are going to succeed in the world. So that growth mindset, so looking at a problem not as a, oh my God, I have to deal with this problem, but rather, this is an amazing challenge that I get to learn from perspective, is going to be a really important way that GSB discerns who makes a really good GSB representative and who is really strong but may not really fit the culture that they're looking for. How you lead is the next element, or next piece of the puzzle of evaluating your candidacy. So are you a servant leader, or are you sort of perhaps a more kind of going into two different spectrums, a more traditional leader? The hint here is that you should be more slanting towards a servant leader than a traditional leader, because tradition has no place at GSB. It's really about, or sort of the old school tradition. I'm sure they have their own traditions that they follow, but the old school leadership does not really fit in the GSB community. It's really about being of service to the world. And how do you see the world is the next element of their evaluation process. And that means that they're going to look at how the world, how do you see playing a role in the world? How are you going to use the opportunities at GSB to really change elements of what's not working? Because there's always opportunities for growth. And growth only comes from an innovation mindset. And above all, the character, GSB is looking for a character that is looking to change the world through innovation. It is never, the status quo is never good enough. Things can always be improved. And how can we look at a area that you are passionate about, that you care about, and how can you innovate in that area? What are opportunities that the world offers you for you to, and GSB, with the support of GSB, to make the change and to bring about innovation and bring about change in that industry or sector? Let's look at Wharton. Wharton, I mean, it's known as a finance school. It is very analytical, and that's something that you need to, demonstrate in your writing, demonstrate in your past experiences, but it's also something you should know, that you should expect going in. Once you're admitted, you will have to go through an intensive training in, analysis, and that is part of joining the institution. They also have, what I appreciate about Wharton is that they have a really robust leadership development program. There's a lot of opportunities for you to become a better leader. And for those individuals that think of Wharton only as a finance school, there's been quite a bit of change at the institution. Of course, there's still a very analytical school that approaches business problems from a very analytical perspective, but they are moving away, not just being a finance school, but also looking at having a bit more focus on the tech sphere and innovation and entrepreneurship. So they do have, as an MBA student, you would have opportunity to join the San Francisco campus for one semester, and the idea is particularly may be appealing for those individuals that need access or want access to the Silicon Valley, ecosystem there. So what is Wharton looking for in applicants? So one of the things that Wharton looks for is that impact-minded applicant who has been of impact to the community that they have been a part of. Particularly, Wharton cares a lot about your professional experiences, so you do need to showcase how much of an impact you have made in the sort of professional environment you have been in. You have to demonstrate that you have an analytic aptitude, that you can be trained, even if your job doesn't necessarily require you to be using analysis on a day-to-day basis, demonstrating that you solve problems from an analytical perspective is going to be, or analytical lens is going to be a pretty critical element of the application process. And above all, Wharton is a very community-focused school. They have, students lead quite a lot of things on campus, and they, when they admit students, or part of that evaluation criteria is to conduct a team-based discussion interview, which is essentially a simulation of what your experience at Wharton is going to be like. And it's about working with people from various different backgrounds, coming up with a solution towards a given project that you'll be working on. So having the ability to demonstrate that you are collaborative and can work cross-disciplinary is going to be key to getting you to that interview. And also, of course, being successful there means that there's a higher probability of being able to get on the other side, meaning being admitted to the program. So with that in mind, how do you tell your story? Let's start, story is an important piece. If you look at these candidates that have been admitted to these programs, if you look at those initial slides, you will see that these are exceptional students that have had amazing, academic experiences and professional experiences. But there's also a lot of people who have exactly that and still don't get admitted by these schools. So how do you tell your story? Story is an important piece of that decision-making process. And let's start with HBS. So I want to make sure that I spend a little bit of time talking about what you shouldn't do for each of the schools, and then what you should do. So what are the don'ts? So for each of the sort of the numbered bullets, read don't before. So don't walk the admission team or admission committee through your life's journey in that 900-word essay. That's one of the greatest mistakes that applicants make. It's not about, walking them through your life. They have the resume, they have the rest of the application. The question is, what else should we know about you? Meaning, what is not in the application already that you can share that will help us make a decision in accepting you into the program. The next thing is, don't use a response from another business school app prompt or business school essay prompt that you have answered. It is really important. There can be stories that are included in the HBS essay, but they have to have a different lens. No other school, and I guess the only one that there can be a correlation with is GSB, but no other school is going to have the same kind of prompt. So you really should start this essay as its own thing that you work on. And then don't be disingenuous. That's why I said it's really important to read the don't before. So don't be disingenuous. One of the things that applicants always make a mistake, I would say, in this application process is to try to fit the mold that they're not. And it's evident that it's not who they are. It's evident in the letters of recommendation that it's not who they are, but they're trying to fit a mold that they think the admission team is looking for. And most applicants don't really ever meet the admission committee reading their application, at least until they're in the program. So how can you understand what is it that they want if you have never met them? So it's always better to be genuine with who you are, but of course, taking the lens of what the school cares about. So when I was talking about, for HBS, that individual who is going to, stand strong against, in front of adversity, that is not really being disingenuous. That's really sharing your story, sharing the experience that you've had. So then what does HBS look for? So you want to identify a theme that speaks about your character, of who you are, and what your motivations are in life. Sometimes applicants talk about the adversities that they've experienced and how that has influenced how they engage not only in their work but also in the community. Sometimes they talk about the disadvantages that they see in the world and how that has influenced them. So it's not the personal piece, but it's how the external has influenced the internal. So, reflection and identifying a theme about who you are is really important. And it should be a single theme that runs throughout the entire essay. Not many themes, not many different things. It's really one piece that is going to be the guiding, um, the anchor in which everything is um, structured around. You need to demonstrate personal growth. So you need to show that you are someone who is mature, someone who has had experiences and has learned from those experiences, and those experiences has helped them become better leaders, better members of the community, whatever your experience is coming in. And then you're going to use specific examples to illustrate any of the points that you make. Oftentimes, I see applicants being very vague, not giving specific details. It is really important that details are included. You don't want to include a slew of examples. You're better off to include 2 really detailed examples than to include 5, just because it is those examples that need to embody your point. And those examples are how you illustrate that you are that character that you speak that you are. Let's go to, and if you have any questions about the HBS application, approach to the application, please write your questions in the chat, because as I go through the next 2 schools, I'm going to start looking at your questions in the comment and try to address those within our allotted time. So let's go to GSB. One of the things I often see is in that what matters most to you is a family member, a grandfather who has influenced their leadership, but there's no evidence that supports that. There's stories or stories around, how someone is doing something that has inspired them, and that is a major no for this first question, which is what matters most to you. What matters most to you is about you and only you. You can always use external factors, but anything that you say, external sort of influences, but it's anything that you include in there is about how you have yourself engaged in that which matters most to you. So it's not about ideas, it's really about action. And that's also what GSB cares a lot about. Action is really important. Also, in the second question, which is why GSB, don't tell them how great of a reputation they have. They know who they are. The question is really about why GSB for you and your goals. That is what you need to answer. And always keep in mind that your goals are your North Star, are your guiding principle that gets you to wake up every single morning and to take action towards that, gaining skills, gaining experiences towards that goal. The second question is about answering how is GSB essentially going to support you to get to where you want to go. That shouldn't say be disingenuous. Don't be disingenuous is another piece, again, that you don't want to include in the GSB application. It's really important that you are vulnerable. And I don't mean vulnerable as in like you spill your guts out of all the experiences that you've had, but it's really about sharing what has helped you grow, sharing who you are as an individual and what motivates you, and how you care essentially about the world. It's not just about the bottom line. So GSB. So what are the things that you should do in the GSB application? See if I can move this a little bit. Okay. All right. Identify a theme that speaks to an injustice you see in the world. This is especially for essay one. It's about what matters most to you. Should be something that is, taking into account what GSB cares about. It's what matters most to you in the world, essentially, in how things are, how you engage with the world, what do you care about, essentially. And now, the one thing I would say here is that this does not need to be related to your goals specifically. But if there is a theme that connects, especially if there's a theme in your application that connects to your future goals, that what you want to do, then it's pretty obvious response on that front. For your goals, so this is again the second question, look at your target industry and identify its greatest challenges so you can present an innovative solution to that challenge. GSB is notorious about admitting students who want to change the world, who want to use technology, who want to use the latest, technological developments, or even just challenge or leverage various technologies to challenge the status quo within the specific area that they care about. So your GSB goals should not be about consulting. Even if they are about VC and PE, which are obviously, you saw that those are areas that they place a lot of students in. It has to be for a purpose that is greater than yourself, and that is really, really important. It is purpose that is related to the world, essentially, and the impact you're going to make as a private equity investor, as a venture capital investor, in that specific situation. And then oftentimes I see applicants who unfortunately later on learn that the optional short answer questions in the application portal, while they're technically optional, they shouldn't be really optional. They should be taken as an opportunity for you to showcase to GSB how you meet the candidate, how do you meet the culture, or how you match the culture of GSB through examples that you share. So look at the entire application as an opportunity, and this is true also for the other schools. Look at the entire application as an opportunity for you to share who you are, so that the schools can have a genuine presentation of yourself and be enticed by who you are to invite you for an interview, and then that, of course, succeed in that to then get to the next phase, which is the admission itself. So let's move on to Wharton. So at Wharton, don't present lofty ideas. GSB and Wharton are almost like polar opposites in that front, although lofty ideas don't really work in business school anywhere. It needs to be tangible, but particularly Wharton doesn't, from my experience, it doesn't necessarily care about lofty ideas, cares about how do we make better businesses. So bear that in mind as you talk about your goals, especially in essay one. Don't use a response from another business school prompt is also another thing here. You should really speak to why Wharton. Identify specific things that Wharton offers you that are going to help you get to that future goal. And of course, don't be general. Specificity is really important. So if you mention a class, a specific class that Wharton offers, you have to go into more details and answer the why that specific class and how that specific class is going to help you get to your goals. It's going to give you tools or skills that you need to reach that long-term plan. And so what are the do's? Um, do identify a specific problem in your industry that you want to solve, particularly as it relates to leadership. So if you want to be um, a CFO of an organization, well, why do you want to be a CFO? Why should you be the CFO? That's the answer you should include in there. What approaches, what kind of leadership approaches did you see in the world in your experiences that you feel the industry needs a change in, that you need an MBA to help you become that leader so that you can lead better, so that businesses become more thriving businesses and that they last for generations? You don't need to include the generational piece in there, but for the purposes of for the purposes of understanding kind of how to think about the goal segment in SA1. Um, you have to demonstrate that you are a team oriented and project centric. You have a project centric mindset. This means that you are someone who really cares about um, accomplishing a goal. And you also have to demonstrate that you are someone who really leverages his or her team to the best of their abilities to move a project forward, but also help them grow into becoming better professionals. So your second essay for Wharton there's an opportunity for you to really demonstrate how you are a team-oriented leader and how you are project-centric, even in the face of um, uh, times when you have been challenged about, the decisions that you make, especially if you're a leader leading a team, however small or big that team is. This is where you talk about how your analytic mindset, how your strategic mindset has been beneficial to not only help a project move forward, but also help your team become better and stronger leaders and stronger professionals through your leadership. Um, and then the other thing that you need in that second essay, so the second essay is a two-part response. The second piece is really to identify what skills you will be bringing to the MBA classroom and the MBA community at Wharton. So identify specific elements that you have had exposure to. If you think about your principal strengths, as far as a team player or a leader or a teammate or a leader, think about what are your strengths that you bring to a team project, and that's the strength that you're going to share with Wharton. That's what you bring to the classroom and to that environment. So it's really important that you have time to reflect about these, and I know the applications are just around the corner, but reflect about these because we don't have a tendency to think about these things very often. We just do, and it's important that to be able to succeed, especially in the M7s, M7 applications, you do need to take the time to reflect about what you bring, what do you want to get out of the program, and what contributions you're going to make, not just within the institution itself, but also in the greater community and the world or the sector that you're going to be a part of. So with that, I'm going to move to Q&A. We have about 11 minutes, so I'm going to try and answer as many questions as possible. All right. All right, so this question here is from Gaida, who says, how about telling stories? What if we come from an adverse circumstance that had shaped how we perceive the world? That is exactly, especially for HBS, that's exactly what you need to share in that experience. But it's not, one thing that I would caution you, it's not about sharing, a woe is me story. It's really about sharing how that adverse experience has helped you grow and see the world in a different way. And how has that helped you become a stronger leader in the things that you have done after that adverse experience? So definitely share that experience. It just needs to be coming in from a perspective of, you know, this was an experience that, like, from a positive lens, an experience that have shaped me and has helped me become who I am today, like a positive experience. um, Shikar Pandi asks, "Is it even realistic to think that I can get an admit from to HBS?" Um, I would need to know your stats and your past experience. So not sure if I can answer that question. So a 32-year-old, so Ezindu asked the question, will a 32-year-old stand a chance in these programs? How important is age in the admission? Of course, as you get older, so as you get over the age of 30, it becomes a little bit more challenging to gain admission. One of the things that you will have to do in your applications is to demonstrate why you need a traditional MBA as opposed to an executive MBA. So you need to really demonstrate that nuance and how a school like this is going to support you. Now, if you want to work in finance and in consulting, that's going to be almost like it's going to be a huge challenge. So I would consider other avenues, other schools, if that's your specific situation. These schools don't have a spring intake; they only have fall intake. Um, Farzaneh says, "Can you also discuss Yale University too?" And Farzaneh is applying for PhD, and I know the letter for PhD is different, but I don't really know how it is different. Unfortunately, I can't talk about Yale today, but I do have a new series. If you go to my website, which is siaadmissions.com, if you go to the events page, we are having a series called 10 in 10. So for the next 10 weeks, I'm going to have 30-minute weekly calls, weekly sessions where you can come in and ask your questions about those specific schools. Yale is on that list, although the school specific is not, posted yet. But if you sign up to be notified for events, you can definitely join that session and ask the specific question that you have about your PhD application. Catherine Stout is asking, can a prestigious scholarship like a Fulbright stand out to an AdCom as much as career experiences? Not as much. This is business school at the end of the day, but a Fulbright is a major accomplishment, which demonstrates that you are the kind of individual that these types of programs are interested in, but it's not a replacement for work experience. Definitely it will be valuable, but you need to also have work experience to demonstrate that you are the professional that is ready for an MBA. Joseph is asking, undergraduate scores are less, close to 60-70%. Would a high GMAT really give me a chance? It will definitely help you. High GMAT means you have to be way above the, I'm assuming 60-70% you are an international applicant. And that also depends what the 60-70% mean in relation to your class. So where do you rank in your class, and what kind of school did you attend? All of those are important factors in your education, in the education criteria and evaluation. Definitely GMAT has to be above the average for someone who has a lower GMAT score to demonstrate that you are ready to go through the rigorous process that these schools require of you. There are other ways that you can demonstrate academic readiness. So Harvard Business School has a core program. The program is called CORE, C-O-R-E. And that is essentially a MBA readiness program. It's very intensive. It's between 12 and 17 weeks, depending on which session you sign up for. And you have to pass an exam to get a certification at the end. And it's highly coveted program that all these schools really value and know how strong of a program it is for candidates that are coming in. So if you have a low GPA, definitely counter that with a stronger GMAT or GRE, stronger than average. And also look at classes at enrolling in sort of certification bearing programs like HBS Core, or something that is strong, that is valued in the academic circles, because you want to demonstrate that you've been challenged and you can handle the challenge to be able to succeed in these programs. So how important is the GMAT GRE when compared to other parts of the application process? The GMAT and the GRE is just one metric. It is important insofar as it determines how you compare. It's like one of the standard tests that the schools ask, where applicants are sort of compared equally against each other, and it demonstrates kind of that readiness. The quant is a really important piece there, but it's not the most important piece. The only caveat that I would say here is if you're applying, if your goal is to work in consulting, your GMAT is going to be a required piece of the evaluation process. So definitely, if you're going to pitch consulting, you need to have a score that is equivalent to the averages or close to the averages to be able to demonstrate to the school that you will be competitive in the pool of consultants that is trying to get a consulting job or a consulting internship. Post-MBA goals are different, but is it necessary that our theme that we would present is related to MBA, like business solutions, financial solutions? So Venkat, I'm assuming that you're asking about what matters most to you question for GSB. They don't need to be the same. So the question, the what matters most to you doesn't need to be related to your goals. It can be very different. As far as the HBS application, the theme itself, there should be some sort of connection in some particular way, because the end of that essay is going to talk about why HBS and what you're looking to do. So, or in most situations, it answers that question, or it covers that piece there, because you don't have a lot of space to say anything else about, in the HBS application. So try to find a connection in some particular way that connects to the goals, so that you can sort of conclude the essay with, bridging the, how the experiences, the growth that you've had influences your future. Venkat also asked, can we present analytical and leadership skills from technical background? Technical background is definitely going to talk about your analytical aptitude, essentially. Leadership, it depends on what kind of technical background, how did you lead, in what particular way. So yes, absolutely, you can, any field, right? It doesn't matter if it's technical, if you're coming in from consulting, if you're coming in from finance, if you're coming in from retail or nonprofit, you can demonstrate leadership in all of those, on all of those fields and all of those experiences. So sometimes it requires just digging a little bit deep to find it. All right, I'm going to answer one last question. So Zindu says, I currently work in technology. However, I aspire to pivot to a different role, product development or product management. I'm thinking access to internship can help me pivot, which is why I'm considering a traditional MBA. Do I stand a chance? This is Zindu, who was 32 years old. The internship can definitely be, I mean, that makes sense as far as what you want to do. In the role of product development or product management, they're not necessarily that sticklers for age specifically, so I think you should be okay. I would probably say that this should be a year that you take it very seriously as far as your applications are concerned, and don't only target HBS, GSB, and Wharton, but rather expand that list to schools that you care that give you what you need, and there are plenty of others that can help you make this transition, so that you have a MBA offer in hand by the end of the application cycle. All right. If you would like to discuss your case in your application, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much for staying with us during this entire session. And if you're watching a replay, thank you also for rewatching it. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful application season. And let us know in what ways we can be of support to you.